Hi everyone, I'm Liz Henderson, Director of Edge Women, and I'm so excited that you're tuning in tonight for Season 3 of Refuel and Recharge. Our hope is that this whole series inspires you as you hear stories of women around the country who we deeply admire. Tonight is a special episode as we head to Indy's famous cake bake shop with Ruth Chou Simons and Christy Nockels. We can't wait for you to hear from two women who we deeply admire. Before we get started, I'm going to toss it over to my colleague, Ann O'Brien, who will share with you a little bit more about what Edge is.
Thanks, Liz. Everyone at Edge is so excited that you have joined us tonight for this event. And I'd like to take a moment to tell you a little bit about Edge and how you can get involved. Edge is a nonprofit organization that focuses on whole person development, which includes personal, professional, and spiritual growth. We're based in Indianapolis, but we have participants from all around the country. And we invite you to join us. There are several ways that you can join the Edge community. The first is Edge groups. We pair 5 to 7 young professionals with a more seasoned leader who serves as a mentor. And these groups meet every 2 weeks for a year and walk together personally, professionally, and spiritually. We also have Edge at Work, which takes Edge's proven mentoring model and brings it to the workplace. Companies select emerging leaders to participate in this cohort-based curriculum program for 12 months, where they focus strictly on personal and professional growth. We also invite you to join us for Edge events, which you already have tonight, and we have virtual events as well as in-person events. And we hope that you consider joining the Edge community, learning more at edgementoring.org.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. We're so excited that you're here for our kickoff event for our Edge Women series, Refuel and Recharge. We're so excited to have Ruth with us tonight and Christy. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you for having us.
As I've said earlier, our goal for Edge Women's events is to get to know the women behind the books, behind the songs, and get to know their hearts personally. And so we just feel so delighted and blessed that you guys would be here tonight. So thank you so much. Ladies, throughout our series, you're going to hear from women including Christy Wright, Mary Beth Chapman, incredible chef Tenoria Askew. Do you guys know her from MasterChef? She was amazing. We were with her earlier today, and so many more. And so we hope this season inspires you, it uplifts you, it challenges you, and we hope that you go home with tonight's conversation fresh on your mind and in your heart about maybe how you can make a difference in your own world with where you're at. So we're going to get started, though. I'm going to ask you guys, I want you first, instead of me describing who you are, would you each share a little bit about yourselves and what you do and your family life at home?
Yes. Well, yes, as I said, I'm Christy. My husband, Nathan, and I, we've been married for 25 years, and we have 3 kids. Noah's 20, and Eliana's 18, and our youngest, Annie Rose, is 13. And Nathan and I have written music together for longer than we've, been married. We started writing when we were dating. We met through friends in Oklahoma. And have really just spent a lot of years being sort of partnered with ministries. One of them's Passion Conferences. For years we walked with that ministry. And so I love our favorite venture together, I think Nathan and I is parenting and just getting to be a part of our kids' lives. And that's actually part of my story, is that God called me to lay down my career for a time, really called me away from the platform for a time to really reorder my life in order to take care of my kids first. And he taught me a ton through all of that, really just learning to be seen by him in a secret place. And life had gotten really, really busy. And so the last really 15 years of my life has been learning to still use my gifts and the things that he's given me, to share about who he is, but do that from a place of rest. And even now kind of including our kids in that. Our oldest is in our band and travels with us. He plays guitar for us. And so it's been sweet. So our journey is, been a really just a bit of a learning how to rest. And that's, the book I just wrote is learning to live from a heart of rest. And so, that's a little bit about, we live in Franklin, Tennessee. And yes, and I hope that you're going to live in Franklin, Tennessee.
I've loved this girl next to me for a huge part of my adult life. And so it's an honor to get to share this moment in many stages with you these days. I am Ruth Chou Simons. I am the founder of GraceLaced.com, and I'm an artist and an author of a few books you have probably seen that combine art and truth. I really firmly believe that women do not need to choose between sound doctrine and beautiful things. Like, those two things should be able to go together. I am a mama to 6 boys. Just let that sink in for a minute. I've learned to not go real quick through that. Just let everybody breathe for it. Yeah. My grocery bill is atrocious. My husband, who caused that to happen, is here with me tonight. His name is Troy. And we've been married for almost 23 years. We live in Western Colorado, where I paint butterflies, but we are all about dirt biking, mountain biking, jeeping, mud. Nothing is clean in my house ever. And we are in a previous season of life. We were in full-time local ministry where Troy was a pastor and a headmaster of a classical Christian school that we co-founded with some others. But in this current season of life, we are all in together, running GraceLaced together. And it's really sweet to be able to share with you all the behind the scenes tonight of what it is to serve in this particular season of my life through writing and painting.
That's great. Thank you, ladies. So Christy just released a new book in February called The Life You Long For, Learning to Live from a Heart of Rest. And Ruth just announced that she has one coming out soon. And I love the title. It says, When Striving Cease, Replacing the Gospel of Self-Improvement with the Gospel of Life-Transforming Grace. And so there's this beautiful thread woven throughout both of them about learning to live from rest and to stop striving. So talk to us a little bit about your heart behind writing these books. Christy, let's start with you, and then we'll go to Ruth.
Yes, well, as I was sharing before, it's really, the book starts out with my story of how the Lord brought me away from the platform. And I think a lot of that, I was raised in the church. My dad was a pastor. And so a lot of my life, I realized at that point it was early 30s. I had 2 littles at the time, and realized I was in an unsustainable pace. I was just living, and I was really kind of living from yes to yes, and had exhausted myself. And I call it my farm table epiphany. Just had a moment where the Lord really came and interrupted that pace and drew me back to this place of what would it look like. I kind of use the analogy of living from the bullseye. What would that look like? To trust him. Really, rest comes from surrender and trust, which is the gospel, when we accept, Jesus for who he is, and that we place all of our faith in him and our trust in him to make us right before God. Really, this place of surrender and trust can keep going. We can live from that gospel place, that gospel story. And so the Lord really he interrupted my life, as I said, 15 years ago, and started teaching me what would it look like to trust him with even what he's given me, my singing voice, and eventually even my writing. And what would it look like if I surrendered that and really trusted him, and, trusted him almost to hold it up. I talk about Psalm 37. That's where he took me that morning. And what if I held up your cause? It says, delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to him, trust in him, and he'll do this. He'll make your righteousness shine like the dawn, and the justice of your cause like the noonday sun. He'll hold up our cause. So what would it free me to do if I trusted him with my cause, if I trusted him with the things he's put in me to share? And I love it that we're all here together, and what Edge is about is because it freed me actually to see people for the first time almost in my life. I started seeing women that God was bringing around me. I started seeing my children differently. They weren't just these blobs that needed something from me, all day long. It was like I have an irreplaceable role in their life. And like they became like I saw them for who they are. And so I kind of talk about just what that looks like to live from the bullseye and trust Jesus and surrender, and how that really does cultivate rest. And what I mean by rest, it's like a propelling rest that has us contending for kingdom things like never before. So it's not necessarily, we need a lay around rest. We need a Sabbath every week. But this is more like a rest that it's like a soul rest where you are trusting him with these things to carry what's in your heart so that you can like look side to side and go like, who is God calling me to pour into today? So, yeah.
So good. That's so good, Christy. It's fun that since I just announced the book cover, y'all are actually the very first people I'm verbally telling what the book is about. So it's kind of fun, but give me grace as I haven't, gone on book tour and talked about it very much. It's a deeply personal book. If you've seen my previous books, they're more devotional in nature. There's art involved. This is the first time I've written a book that goes through 15 chapters that will take you on a journey, and it involves my journey. I think what you've seen on the front end of my ministry has been a lot of understanding who God is and devotionals that keep you thinking about the character of God, but it's taken me a long time to get to that place. And I am an immigrant. I was born in Taiwan. I came to this country when I was 4, and if you can imagine what it might be like to suddenly learn English and understand what American cheese is and what a grilled cheese is and what peanut butter and jelly is. I mean, there's just all sorts of cultural implications when a little girl is trying to assimilate and belong and understand how to, like, what are anyone from the 80s, what are Jordache jeans and why is it so special to have a little horse on your, pocket on your rear end, or what is Guess? And, those things that everybody experiences, but especially when you are an outsider coming in, how do you have favor and belonging? And so when I chronicle a little bit about my journey of being raised in a very performance-driven culture, not everyone who's raised in an Asian American background is experiencing that, but we certainly understand, all of us, that as women, sometimes we're raised within a culture of only straight A's are acceptable, only perfection, only excellence. Why is that pillow out of place? Why is your bed not made perfectly? And sometimes we put that on ourselves because we are so desiring to earn favor with others and with God. And we think that we understand the concept of grace, but the reality is, if you look at our bookshelves currently, there's a reason why self-help and self-improvement is the number one selling topic in all books at all times. You do not have to go very far to find 10 strategies for how to lose weight, be a boss entrepreneur, just be amazing at everything, right? And there's just so much strategy out there. And if we're all so exhausted, I'm just going to speak on behalf of all of us. I would say, if you are not exhausted right now, I'm just thinking, congratulations, you're doing really great. But please tell me your secret. But the reality is, I think if we're really honest and we're not all dressed up, sitting at a luxurious, beautiful night out, we're probably going, oh my goodness, my list, my tasks, we feel exhausted and weary. And I'm just asking the question, if all those methods help, why are we so tired? If it's so easy to go pick up a book on strategies, why are we, as bearers and the ones who know the gospel, why are we so exhausted and weary, constantly wondering why we're not measuring up? If you ask, the gal sitting next to you, likely she will at some point in the conversation say, I just don't know if I'm enough for the job that I have, or the children that I have to take care of, or the ministry I'm called to. The enough question constantly comes up. And I would love for our generation to revisit Ephesians 2:8 and understand that grace is a gift of God. It's not because of what we've done. And what happens when we are fueled, just like Christy said, whether you want to call it a place of rest, because it's true. That is what we've been given, the peace of God. But when we suddenly realize that there's nothing, whether you are raised in a performance culture environment or not, there's nothing we can do to make ourselves more pleasing or better apart from the gospel, apart from the blood of Christ. And I think sometimes when you've been in the church a while or you've been around other Christian women, the word grace can just feel like a plaque from Hobby Lobby. And you might forget how powerful and how astounding and how amazing grace is. And so my plea and my hope is that when that book hits the shelves on October 12th, that we would stop trying to be so amazing ourselves and learn to like really, really sit in the amazing grace of God and be fueled by favor.
That's so good, ladies. And I think what you're talking about is so different than what we as women hear in culture today. On Instagram, we see the importance to hustle in this boss babe movement and to be busy and productive. So talk to us about the difference that you both experienced personally when you began to live life differently. And what did it look like to live life differently?
Yeah. Well, in the beginning, actually, I tell a couple of stories in the book that, it was not only counterculture, but it was even counter church culture in some ways, at least, kind of in the lane we were in. And so that was kind of surprising. I remember just even when we told at the time we were called Watermark, Nathan and I were like a Christian duo, and we were singing and we were on a record label, and we had, all these people kind of peering in. We had management, we had all great people doing great things. I mean, they were just trying to do their job. But when we started to say like, hey, what if we valued our family? Like, what would that look like to say no to some things? We got major pushback, and that was actually kind of surprising to us at first. And so we realized that, wow, I mean, we were just kind of two kids who needed just, fathering in that moment too. And we realized like we were going to have to truly look to him in these days and go like, okay, Lord, we also realized that he was asking us to do some things, like some actual things, like say no, and to like kind of lay some things down and to obey him in a way that was a little bit scary. And it felt a little bit kind of audacious, like when especially I just decided to lay down that career for a while. We didn't re-sign our record deal. And so we made some decisions that what's so beautiful now, and I love that it took me 15 years to write this book, is because I know that I was supposed to be living it up until this moment, over and over, and just to see God's faithfulness in that when we laid that thing down, he's been so good, just to return over and over the things that I thought I was surrendering maybe forever, but him just to see over the years of him be so faithful to give that back. And then just to see the fruit of our kids, and just like they're 2018 and 13, as I said before, and just the relationship that's there. And that just so many times I just say like, God, thank you so much, that you caused me to be able to see them. And really it's just been a precious gift, I think, over time to kind of look back and even just be living in some of that. But even still, like just making decisions, even still to this day, I think that really just we have things as a family that we sort of recognize like this is worth the sacrifice. So there are those things sometimes that you're like, okay, we're going to hit it hard for this for a season. We're going to kind of wave this flag and carry it together. And then there's other times where it's like, you know what, this is going to cost too much. And we've just asked the Lord for wisdom in those things to go like, this is going to disrupt this season in a way that the cost is heavier than, God is giving us grace for. And so I think it's that for us is just, resisting that tendency that, the world tells us we've got to hustle. And one of the things I realized just early on was that hustling was actually ultimately holding me back. I thought it was actually propelling me, but it was a striving that was actually holding me back from the very place of rest and sort of really intimacy, really with God that I was longing for. And I was, sort of trying to fill that ache with other things. But it was more like the Lord calling me to this place of rest in him so that, as I said before, I could be propelled into the things that he was really calling me to be a part of. So, yeah. So good.
So good. And Ruth, before you answer, we've been asked to take a quick break while they finish serving the food, and then we'll get going again.
Hi, I'm Steph Miller.
And I'm Jen Miller.
And we're the owners of Lily and Sparrow Boutique. We loved hosting Ruth with GraceLaced the other night.
We started our store 7 years ago with a heart to be able to love on women and to create a safe space for them to come in. We carry a variety of products, including clothing, shoes, accessories, and gifts.
We find pieces that are unique to the area. We get new arrivals weekly, so if you haven't had the chance to stop on by, we'd love to see you.
We were sharing about how what you believe about where rest comes from, what really propels you, actually causes you to be more fruitful. And the backstory to the business that I started, GraceLaced.com, is that 13 years ago when GraceLaced as a blog started, it was because I really wanted to understand how the grace of God would be laced, actually weave in and out of my everyday life, the everyday life that didn't look like standing on stage, didn't look like a professional artist, didn't look like I had a publishing deal. I was raising littles at home and supporting and coming alongside my pastor husband, my headmaster husband, and going, how can I live this everyday life and really cling to the gospel in the same way I would if I was on the mission field? And so sometimes we think of our dreams. I mean, each of you in here, you're probably in this room because there are things that you are working towards. There are goals you are setting. There's little buds, like dreams that you've been trying to find a way to navigate for years. And sometimes the world wants to tell us that there's a formula, right? There's a way to succeed. There's a way to pursue something. And there's a lot of good strategies out there. But I think Christy and I would both agree here. And I love that, Liz, you have the heart to bring us to talk about this, that ultimately it is out of the overflow of our hearts that we produce the very best work. And so we think we can, and we all can, kind of put out a lot of content right away. We can schedule Instagram posts. We can take lots of pictures and we can go and go and go. But the reality is we all fizzle out and you suddenly realize, wow, I don't have anything here to like keep going. In the same way that if you're reading God's word only so that you can have content to post about or to write about or to go teach somebody with, you're really not being nourished yourselves. And so you can go run a race when you've actually taken care of yourself. You're actually nourished. You've trained for it. And so part of that training and the nourishment is to actually be deeply rooted in the true fuel. And as believers, that fuel is the grace of God, not your own striving, not your own strategies. It is the grace of God. And so I love to tell that story because I think sometimes it's easy to look at maybe somebody's Instagram account or their successful business and think, oh my goodness, they just arrived at success this way. But I just love to tell the story that everything you read from my books and really all the content that you see me put out these days really came out of a probably 10, almost 15-year season where it was very hidden. And it wasn't put on Instagram every day. And actually, young ladies came over during nap time and helped me prep for dinner, or I'd be nursing a baby and counseling. I was talking about preaching truth to your own heart 10, 15 years ago while I was nursing a baby and counseling a young college girl. But now I'm writing Bible studies about preaching truth to yourself. Do you see how, like, ultimately anything you want to do someday actually has to start today with the faithfulness that is behind the scenes in the everyday? And so I guess my encouragement here is just for every effort we want to make, for every moment we want to have on a stage or to really proclaim and stand in what we feel really called to, do the work behind the scenes and the quietness of just the time between you and the Lord, because out of the overflow there will be really, really good fruit.
That's so good. Ladies, we're going to open it up for you to ask questions in just a few minutes, so be thinking of that as Christy's going to answer our next question. Christy, in your book, you talk about the word capacity. Could you explain a little bit about the chapter you wrote on that and where that came from?
Yeah. So there are 3 sections of the book, and as I was kind of telling you a while ago about the bullseye, this picture that I sort of unfold. And the first part of the book is really about the calling of what I call the calling of the beloved. And, as I said, when the Lord kind of brought me off the, platform for a while, brought me to the secret place, it was like about discovering my highest calling again, which is really just to be his daughter and to be his beloved. And what does that look like? To live from that place, and as Ruth's saying, there's an overflow that comes from that. And so it was really sort of a reordering of my life that happened. And then, just as he, over the years really started to show me those concentric circles, sort of I talk about in the book, those outer rings of my life, that next outer one wasn't capacity, it was community. So I love that out of our calling, we walk into community first. So it's people before productivity, it's community before our capacity. And I love to think that we bring others with us into our capacity. And then as I got to that capacity section, I thought it was just kind of cool. It was like, okay, I need a C word. I had calling, which I knew that was kind of, from a long time ago. And then community I knew was there. And it was like, what's that kind of next? What's that most outer ring? And it needs to be a C word. And of course, capacity comes to me, and what from the Lord, I believe, but just what was so sweet, what it really was when I was writing the book that I started to really think about, okay, so this is the section of the book we're going to get to that place where the outer rings of our lives, sort of when we do take what God has given us and we share it with the world, what does that look like? But one of the things that was so sweet that I got to that place, and it was like, goodness, like a lot of, my capacity has, grown out of these places of actually like, when I had miscarriages and things like not going as planned, and like interruptions in life that were really, really hard. And, but there was so much growth out of those times. And I started studying on that word capacity, and you can look at that two different ways. You can look at capacity, which we're all really familiar with. We get it when it's like, okay, what do we got to produce today? We got to crank stuff out. We got to get the to-do list done. So capacity, I don't know why I always think of just like this cranking machine that like, just as moms, I think sometimes we feel like we're that machine cranking things out and getting things done. So capacity, you can look at it like that. But I thought it was so sweet of the Lord to show me that really the capacity of the beloved can look just as much like when you look at the second definition of capacity, it's what you can hold or contain or receive. So you can look at capacity as being filled. And so I think about Ephesians 3, when Paul prayed for the Gentiles, he was like, that you would be rooted and established in love, and that you would grasp together with all the saints, how the breadth and the height and the width, of God's love, so that you may be filled with all the fullness of God. And so I love that idea that even in seasons when I had lost 2 babies in a row, or I went through hearing loss for a while, and just these really gut-wrenching seasons of my life, but I can look back and go like, I was at high capacity because I was being filled in those times. So I love it that even just seasons that, don't look like how we planned, I love it that it doesn't sideline us. Like it absolutely aligns us to be able to be filled with all that God has for us in every season. And it doesn't have to look like what we're scrolling through every day. It can look like something God is doing on the inside that like literally changes us forever. So I love that he just, even when it wouldn't have happened, even if I hadn't just, I sat down to write it, and it was like he showed me all those things. It was something that wasn't even planned when I started the book, that capacity could look like that for us as the beloved of God. So
you both talk about the importance of being discerning as well. So obviously you're women with multiple things on your plates, your moms, your wives, your friends, your entrepreneurs. How do you discern what to say yes to in your life and what to say no to? And how do you involve your family along the way?
Yeah, that's a good question. I like to think of my husband, Troy, as the CEO, the chief encouragement officer. He's the shepherd of our home, and really the president, the board of directors of me, And so I love that I don't have to personally think constantly, like make these decisions on my own. I can bring my family, just like Christy was saying. I love how many things are overlap in our stories, that we as a family say, okay, we're going to hustle together in this season. This is the season where Mama's going to put in some long days because I have a book deadline. And this is what it's going to take for all of us. And so when we make those decisions, they don't have to go, this is her thing, and we got to go do something else. But they feel like they're part of the ministry of writing. They get to be part of. They get to think through like what it is that we're going to come alongside and run this race together. Every yes is a no to something else. And it means that you can do a lot of different things, but we as women sometimes want to do everything all at the same time. We're really like, why can't I just do it all? And then that's where that sneaky word balance comes in, because we think we can balance it when really we have to make good choices. And those choices, sometimes the number one word that comes to my mind at all times is stewardship, right? It is just about stewardship, not running after things that aren't yours. Not wanting somebody else's story, as we read in the Chronicles of Narnia, right? Not wanting somebody else's story, somebody else's circumstance, but saying, okay, let me look at who is actually in my life right now. What's the actual audience I have? Is the audience is who's listening? Is it the 3-year-old and 5-year-old right in front of me? Or do I have young women who are listening to me? Do I have a church Bible study? Do I actually have a whole bunch of Instagram followers who are listening? Who is it that God's already given me, rather than go searching for something I don't have and making all my decisions based on what I don't have in the scarcity mentality, to go, God's already given me so much. How do I steward what I have right now, like the talents, right? Steward that now, and that helps me make decisions. I always say, okay, how do I steward well what I have and say yes to what I already have and increase what he's given? And so that helps me a lot. And I think Troy and I think that way together and bring the family along, so much so I say this, and sometimes it's surprising to my friends and people who listen, but I have my kids read my Instagram posts often, because I don't want them looking. I mean, I spend a lot of time on Instagram. That's where I do a lot of my work. And I don't want them seeing Mama sit on the couch with a phone in her hand doing her thing. So many times I just invite them over and go, hey guys, I'm working on an Instagram post. Why don't you help me pick out the next word? I'm stuck on this word. And sometimes we're going through it together, or we're talking about the day. And so there are multiple ways in which it can turn into something where you steward the moment, and it doesn't become making decisions on how to further yourself, but further what God's given you. So
That's so good. Christy, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I brought my friend Megan with me, and she is a dear friend of mine. She's from Franklin. And so we were actually just talking about this in the car. I'm sort of in a season after releasing the book that, I've done. Ruth was even asking me, there's a lot of publicity things that you've got to do, and like a lot of Zoom calls and things and that is sort of, coming to a close a little bit since the book came out in February. And so now, I think one of the things that I try to be really intentional about is, I'm already, able to, and it's probably just because I'm coming out of that season where it's been really hard. My mom is actually in the fight of her life with cancer right now. And that has been like something that sort of broadsided us, and has been just, we're really kind of living hour by hour in these days with her. And so it's just been a rough season. And so I'm already like looking ahead to go, okay, how can I prepare for rest? How can I prepare to live from the overflow? And I'm already sensing some things that need to be laid down already. And so I'm sensing that like the grace to do a couple of things that I've had spinning is not maybe there anymore. And so it's like really just like listening to God in these days. And I'm trying to really take like actually this week and next week to rest and to kind of reflect and to like get actual sleep and take care of myself, but really also so that I can get to that place of going like, what needs to be laid down in this season, and what do I need to say no to? And I think early on for me, a lot of years ago, again, it was just about the Lord teaching me to trust him. It was surrender and trust, like I said before. And I think I would say yes to things because I thought, okay, well, if I say yes to that, then it would lead to this. And ultimately, I started to see that I was paving my own path, or I was holding on to some things just in case like God didn't come through in the way that I wanted him to, and things, to unfold the way I wanted them to. And again, it was just that, like, do you trust me? Like, do you really trust me with what I've given you? Like, put it in us. And he's like, do you trust me with it? And so really just that has even been a way to like learn to trust him. And whether that's a yes to something that I'm like, oh my goodness, that scares me to death, or like a no to something that it's like, okay, this may lead to other things, but right now there's the grace to do that isn't there. And so really just, I think the Bible says that we know the shepherd's voice and that he knows us, and that I think getting close to him and so that we can really hear what, and it's really about discernment, like Ruth was saying as well.
So good. We're going to open it up to questions from you guys. If you have a question, just raise your hand and hopefully we'll get to as many as we can. Does anybody have one right off the bat? Great question. So she just asked, what does your routine look like to you? And does it feel sterile?
I tend to be, personally, I have a pretty consistent routine because I work with, 6 boys, but I also work with a team that's spread out around the country. So the hours of my work are defined by the women I work with. It starts on the East Coast and, goes, we have one in the UK as well. So that's kind of crazy. But I'm not a terribly disciplined and routine person. So in the sense of like a day planner open, this is the timer goes off. I'm not, I think of it in terms of big buckets. Like every day I need to have some time in the Word. Every day I need to have some time where I talk to the kids and I spend some really good like eye contact time, and I can tell when I don't. I mean, kind of cranky if I feel like I've been going and I'm still like working at dinner time, and I hate those days, and then more and more I really find that I got to get outside. And I really, we have a mutual friend, Rebecca Lyons, who talks about those as rhythms, right? But, for me, we're in Western Colorado, and the winter months are really hard for me because I'm not outside very much. And so I find that I can't have the overflow if I don't shut off my phone on the weekends, if I don't go on a walk and have an actual conversation, if we're only talking about business all the time, And so I don't think my routine is as productive on paper as, some might think. I mean, and I think I hold things pretty loosely where I know that I'm going to get a call, and that call is probably going to derail me today, and I'm not going to write for 4 hours like I thought I was, or maybe this is going to be late or that. And I think holding things loosely enough to say, okay, I don't want to be a slave to the schedule. I want to know that my why is really clear. And that's kind of the main thing. I would say that that's one of the buckets. I have to like wake up every day and go, why am I still here? Like, what am I doing here? And when the why is clear, then, you could have a fire you have to put out, which is like so often in my life, like a call that I have to deal with, or a new problem or a new issue. It derails your whole schedule, but your why stays the same, and then you can kind of be flexible with it. So in case there are any other not terribly routine or scheduled people in this room, there's hope for us. If your day planner is kind of a mess and you're not following your own schedule, we can still make it. So.
Yeah. Goodness. I am one of those people that am not a routine person. I will say that I do have my staples, and that is like every morning I sometimes even say it out loud, like I got to go get my head on straight. And so that's usually like me going in and at least just reading scripture, if not like journaling something out or praying, or just really sometimes that's been like choosing a scripture that I end up meditating on all day long, or just like coming back to that. And I like to think of that time in the morning as, sort of starting a conversation that I'm going to continue the rest of the day with God. And so my kids have actually gotten used to me when they were really little, just praying out loud in the car. And it's like, oh, we're praying, And so I'm kind of more artist brain and songwriter but in fact, like I actually have seasons where I sort of let songwriting go dormant. And so I'm in that season now, and but kind of praying towards that being awakened. And sometimes I've found that it's harder than others, like to wake it back up. And I'm like, are you alive? But I can't carry all of it. And so to write the book, I had to lay down the songwriting arm and like just let it rest. And so those are some rhythms, that are kind of bigger picture a little bit like than daily rhythms, but just going like, okay, I'm hoping to pick that up now that the author, pen has been placed down for a little bit. And so just some maybe broader strokes there of like what works for me.
I will have you guys wrap it up with this question before we'll have a gig. But if you could leave the women watching today with one piece of advice about how they could bring peace to their home and to their hearts, what would that be?
Well, we don't have internet at our house, so that helps. We don't have, not by choice. We don't have.
I was going to say, wow, you need to explain this.
In fact, like I sort of looked through your questions earlier and you had said something about your home and rest. And I thought, well, it helps that we don't have broadband internet. But yeah, I think just on a aesthetic level, I mean, I think there's something to that. And you're probably the same way with a house full of boys. I think just setting a tone. And my husband and I have always been just really big on that. And that comes down to even like lighting and the music and just the way that our home feels. We've homeschooled too. And so I don't have the TV on in the morning when the kids come down and just kind of, I know like, I'm sure it's kind of all over the map. I can't really tell like who has like kids below age 12. I would love to know. Okay. Yeah. Awesome. But just like setting that tone and I love, my hope for our home is just that when people enter that they almost can't run from rest. It's sort of like they're immediately invited into that. And so we try to just, set that tone and really encourage that with our kids. And we have one, our youngest is like, she's our Tigger. Like Annie Rose is like the one that's the bouncy. She's like 7 on the Enneagram. She's ready to go. And she keeps us young. All the rest of us are pretty chill. So it'll be really interesting with Annie Rose. But I think there's a little bit of like, home is her place to sort of, and for all of us to like recoup. And I love creating that space in my home of just like with colors and with the smell and the sights and the sounds and just creating a space where some of my friends walk in and they're like, I want to put my PJ pants on. And so, but I love creating that kind of space where it just feels like you're at rest when you walk in and you're able just to like let your guard down. And so a lot of great conversations happen in our living room because of that, I feel like. Yeah.
I love that. And this past November, we were at Rebecca Lyon's home filming our holiday special. And she said, you have to go to Christy Nockels' home for Christmas because it just feels magical. So she clearly feels the same way about your home too. So,
I think this past year for all of us, most of us probably felt like it was a little chaotic at home. All the screens open, all the meetings happening, all the half outfits, all the things that were happening in our homes. And sometimes some of us might have even felt trapped and kind of like, how do I can't even like hide a bad moment. Everybody sees everything all the time. But I think one of the byproducts might be that we realize togetherness is actually a really good thing. And we might have all lived very disjointed lives, running from practice, one thing to another, and sometimes not collecting meals together. And so something that I would just encourage, I think anyone can start here. I love that Troy has a priority in the way we start our day, and I kind of have a priority in the way we end our day. Troy is known for being there literally for every boy to walk down the stairs, and he will not let them get their day started until he hugs them for an uncomfortably long time. And, I don't think it's something that he grew up with. And so he just chose. I mean, so for anyone who's like, well, I didn't get hugged like that and I feel a little uncomfortable. Well, I think it was uncomfortable for him to start that as well. But now it's become a thing where he actually models the way our Father invites us to relationship first thing in the morning. So rather than think of it like, oh, I got to go read my Bible first thing in the morning, but that there's an invitation into his presence. And so Troy sets the tone that way by saying one trickles down from, our oldest is 19, our youngest is almost 8. And each one of them, he stands up, puts down his coffee and just hugs him for a long time. I think it's really hard to not whatever stage of tween or weird or whatever is going on. A hug is a really good way to say the invitation's open all day long. And then at the end of the day, we can't all do this at all times. And I know we all have different lives, but somehow a pandemic has kind of leveled all this for us, but you can gather your people to eat a meal together sometime, whatever time of day. It doesn't have to be dinner. It doesn't have to be, it can be with chicken nuggets, whatever it is. I think we have lost the art of conversation. And so then we wonder why we don't have our kids' hearts, or why it's so hard to suddenly talk about something really important. Well, because we've actually given up on the idea that we really should all lay our phones down and just keep talking and linger at the table for uncomfortably long time. So whether it's an uncomfortably long hug in the morning or an uncomfortably long conversation around dinner, do what it takes. I often say, like, serve ice cream every meal if you need to, or just do something fun, or like do marshmallows and dip them in chocolate, whatever it is to keep everybody at the table. Ask some questions, get the conversation going, because on a really good day, it seems really easy, but on a hard day, you will have that routine set already.
Such great advice and wisdom from you ladies. We're so grateful that you would spend your evening with us. As you can see right now, our cake is about to be served. And so we'll let you enjoy your cake, and we'll have Ruth and Christy maybe stop by your tables to chat with you all.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening, and a special thanks to both Ruth and Christy for their authentic and engaging conversation. We look forward to you joining us in 2 weeks to hear from Allison Robinson and Megan Nail around women in the workforce. If you like this content and would like to hear more of it, I'd ask that you consider donating by texting 44321 and entering EDGE 2021 in the message line. Thanks to all of our sponsors for making this possible, and to all of you for joining us. Take care and be well.